welcome to Are We There Yet? Market Scale's online video podcast series that explores the most exciting cutting-edge projects, technologies, companies, and individuals in transportation and mobility today. My name is Grant Harrell, and as your host, I'll speak with the voices of today's most exciting companies, learning truly what's at the cutting edge of transportation technology today. And today I am especially excited to learn about the Perlan Project and very excited to learn about the programs, technologies, partners that are all a part of this incredible project. I had the opportunity to meet with the Chief Executive Officer of the project a few weeks ago at EAA Air Ventures 2022 in Oshkosh, Wisconsin. And since meeting, have been really excited to continue the conversation within the podcast series. So really excited to learn more about that project today. To provide the audience with a little bit of background on the project, the Perlan Project is truly an internationally celebrated world record-setting climate and aerospace research project. It's truly expanding the boundaries of aviation and atmospheric research, exploring the stratosphere, really to the very edges of space in a zero emissions research plane with no engine. You heard me right. That's a zero emissions research plane that's achieving these world record flights and some incredible applications and really just enlightening the world with some research and data that's never been seen before. It's an all-volunteer organization. The project really depends upon the contribution of donors and corporate sponsors to make all of this possible. And what they're doing is that they've built a research glider that flies to the edge of space and into the ozone hole. Within the research, they study how stratospheric mountain waves and the polar vortex influence weather and impact high altitude flight safety, for example. So really excited to get into some of the milestones and learning more about the project through the Chief Executive Officer today. The Chief Executive Officer is a gentleman, Ed Warnock, who's dedicated now over 12 years to the Perlan Project. He's a partner with Cumulus Research that's involved in strategic planning, strategy planning, managing change, for example, is also an instructor with the University of Oregon, a faculty member with Willamette University, has served as a development director for projects with the Ministry of Education in South Sudan. So really excited to speak with him today and to learn more about this incredible project. So Ed, hello and welcome to Are We There Yet?
Hello, Grant. Nice to be with you.
Well, thank you so much. Well, I'm really excited to continue our conversation that we started a few weeks ago. Ed and I, as I shared, we're both out at Oshkosh, really the premier aviation event of the year. And Ed and his Airbus team were there at Oshkosh and really enjoyed the opportunity to get to meet with Ed and learn a little bit more about the project. And so if you don't mind, Ed, I'd love to just jump right into the Are We There Yet question. I really love posing an Are We There Yet question with guests, and I'm really excited to learn more about your project and to pose the question today. So a little bit of background, to my question. Your project has really achieved some incredible awards and recognition over the past few years. And just highlighting that a little bit for audience members, this includes things, for example, 2017 Guinness Book of World Records for the highest in-glider flight. You've achieved a 2019 Guinness Book of World Records for aviation, numerous awards through, for example, Society of Experimental Test Pilots, Society of Test Engineers, Royal Aeronautical Society, to name just a few. And so that I understand, however, that the project is far from complete. You're continuing to advance. You're continuing really to push the envelope of possibilities. And as I understand as well, the record-setting days are not over. I understand that you now have your sights for achieving 90,000 feet in an aircraft. And so fitting within the theme of the Are We There Yet series, Ed, if I may, a world record breaking 90,000 feet flight in a manned wing-borne aircraft. Are we there yet?
We're not there yet, but we are planning on making the attempt about a year from now.
Okay.
We will take the Airbus Perlan 2 to South America. We go to the very tip of South America where it narrows down. And from our flight altitude, you can see you'd be capable of seeing both the Pacific and the Atlantic at the same time. And we rely on special conditions. We're a glider. We have no engine, no propulsion at all. And we rely on special conditions that only exist in a few places around the globe and only exist a few days out of the year. So we'll be down looking for stratospheric waves that extend to the top of the atmosphere.
Wow. You mentioned only a few places on Earth and only a few days where you're achieving those types of conditions. Can you tell us a little bit more about the upcoming flight and the venue where that flight will be based out of and a couple of the areas within the world where achieving something like this is possible? I find that especially fascinating.
Okay. Well, let me start with the last part of your question first.
Yeah.
We first learned about these stratospheric waves when our founder, Einar Enevoldsen, who was a fighter pilot and NASA test pilot, he was doing some work in Germany for the DLR, the German Aeronautical and Space Authority. And he was walking down the hall and he saw a picture posted on the wall of something at very high altitudes that had undulations in it. It looked like wave motion. And that is unexpected in the stratosphere. We called the stratosphere because we thought that once you get up to the stratosphere, all vertical motion is below you. And with the occasional thunderstorm that pokes its head up into the stratosphere, we thought, nope, if you can get to the stratosphere, all the bumps are below you, everything is flat stratus. Well, it turns out that these pictures that Einar saw were LiDAR pictures up over Sweden. And he asked the scientist who had posted them, what are they? And the scientist said that they were stratospheric mountain waves. And Einar said, I'm familiar with mountain waves. What are stratospheric mountain waves? And he said, well, under the right condition, when the polar vortex interacts with mountain waves down in the troposphere, they will propagate up through the tropopause into the stratosphere and then to the top sometimes of the whole atmosphere. They've been registered over 100,000 feet high. In fact, the biggest waves on the planet are not in the ocean, they're in the stratosphere. So we first saw them in the early 90s over Scandinavia. And it started a lifelong quest by Einar to say, I would like to go soar those. He did some calculations and said with a properly designed glider, you could fly these waves. These waves are strong enough they could lift a glider up to these altitudes. So he started planning, and he linked up first with Steve Fawcett. And Steve Fawcett and he went and took one of Steve's gliders and outfitted it for pressure suits because they were planning on flying up close to the Armstrong line, the line at which the pressure is so low that at body temperature, the blood inside of our bodies would begin to boil. And so they borrowed pressure suits from NASA, and they began to search around the world for how to reach these stratospheric waves. They went to New Zealand for 5 years, and the waves were above them, but they couldn't break through a layer between the troposphere and the stratosphere. There's a layer where the waves dampen out, and they would get up to maybe 30,000 feet, and just above them would be these incredible waves, but they couldn't quite poke through. So they moved from New Zealand to where we now fly, which is in southern Argentina. And they went to a town called El Calafate. And it is a beautiful location. If I had to retire someplace besides my present location, I would think El Calafate, Argentina. It's near beautiful glaciers, wonderful mountains, and the mountains create the mountain waves, and then they're far enough south that they get the southern polar vortex. And you have to have these high-speed winds of the polar vortex to push the waves up to higher altitudes. So they flew there for a couple of years, and finally they broke through the tropopause, and they set a new world record for gliders at about 51,000 feet. But the important thing was they proved that you could reach these waves in a glider. And once they had gotten up to about 51,000 feet, the pressure suits were expanding. It was cold, and they said, well, we've set a world record. We've proved that we can get here. Let's go for hot coffee and plan how to take advantage of these waves. They came back down, and the Perlan 2 glider was the topic of discussion at that point. How do we build a pressurized glider where we don't have to wear pressure suits?
Okay. Okay. Wow. What an incredible origin to the story, and just how groundbreaking to have found the location where you can find those waves and those conditions, and you've continued to advance that project and take it to the next level, and have achieved the 76,000 and moving on now towards 90,000. So that's amazing. You mentioned that being the location for the upcoming flight. Are there other areas in the world where you can achieve similar conditions, or is it truly just limited to that one area in terms of the perfect conditions for this type of flight?
No, backup over Scandinavia
Uh-huh.
is a possibility,
Okay.
but the evaluation of flying in Scandinavia is the waves occur a little further north, and they occur, of course, in the winter.
Okay.
And the further north you go towards the Arctic Circle, the shorter the days are, the colder the conditions are on the ground, and that makes it difficult for flying. Uh, we have to have enough daylight. We don't want to fly in the dark. We can. The pilots are instrument rated. The aircraft is equipped and rated, but we would prefer to fly in the daytime. Uh, so the north is a possibility. New Zealand is a possibility. We have a new tow plane that tows us through the tropopause now into the stratosphere. And with that tow plane, New Zealand would become a possible place where we could go back and say these flights might be possible in New Zealand. But you need mountains, and you need the polar vortex above them. So it's up near the two poles. Uh, so New Zealand, South America, Scandinavia, possibly someplace over Alaska, maybe someplace over the Ural Mountains in Russia. So there's a couple of candidate locations, but the spot in South America seems to be, probably of all of them, seems to be the best site.
Very good. Very good. Very good. That's incredible, and a great place to retire, nonetheless, as well. So very good. Very good. Talking a little bit about the science and the innovation, it's very fascinating to me, and for audience members that aren't so familiar with the project, as you've touched on a little bit. The project is really exploring the largest waves on the planet, as you shared, and these are the stratospheric waves, as you shared with us, and they're energized by this polar vortex, as you're sharing with us. And as I understand, these waves really play a primary role in creating the ozone hole. And so I'd love, if you don't mind, to learn a little bit more about why exploration of these waves is important, and kind of some of the applications of the project, and really at the end of the day, what we're learning and how maybe we apply this to areas that are important.
The waves have two interests for us. One is global weather. The waves mix the stratosphere in ways that the global weather models need to account for. Uh, yeah, Meteorologists have become aware that no, the stratosphere isn't flat, that things actually move up and down. And our flights are helping to measure those. You mentioned the ozone hole. The waves that we ride also create a type of cloud called a nacreous cloud, or in Scandinavia they're called a Perlan cloud, from whence we got the name for our project. And Perlan means pearl or mother of pearl. And these clouds glow with blues and greens. They're pearlescent and beautiful in the sky. And what's interesting about these clouds is they're not made up primarily of water moisture. They're made up of nitrogen compounds, including compounds of nitric acid. The nitric acid in these clouds interacts with the CFCs that we've released into the atmosphere. And the CFCs and the nitric acid combine in a catalytic process to release free chlorine. And the free chlorine then catalyzes O3, which is ozone, back into O2, which is the oxygen that we have. But it creates a region where ozone is depleted, and we call it the ozone hole. Now, that's interesting to flight safety, which is the other area that we're interested in exploring these waves. The ozone hole allows more particles from space, radiation from space, to enter the atmosphere and get down where airplanes fly. There have been some examples of where electronics on high flying aircraft, airliners, in polar regions have had unexplained anomalies in their electronics, uh, uncommanded autopilot movements. And there is a suspicion that this is simply caused by too much interference, particles hitting the circuit boards, uh, particles hitting the processors, radiation affecting the circuitry. So part of what we're studying is how much radiation is there in these areas. We are carrying instruments that measure what scientists call space weather. It's all the stuff coming in from outer space. The other thing about flight safety is these powerful waves. Our glider weighs a ton when it's flying, and these waves are powerful enough to lift a ton up to the edge of space. Well, the waves are a field. They go up and down and up and down and up and down. Picture a rock in a river with water flowing over it. Downstream of the rock, you get a field where the undulations continue. Now, imagine a high-speed airplane entering that field at the wrong angle. Well, as you would fly into the up part, all of a sudden everybody would say, whoa, the plane's gone up. Then you would fly into the down part, and people would call it an air pocket or something. They would say all of a sudden the bottom fell out. I've got a picture in my computer of an airliner with a food cart that's been thrown around, and then later passengers are being taken off on stretchers. And the suspicion is they were flying in a mountainous area. The suspicion is they didn't hit turbulence, they hit waves. And they simply hit it, and they got thrown up and down and up and down. Imagine driving down a dirt road and you hit some washboards. Well, you can wind up having a terrible ride. It'll break your car, it'll knock your fillings out. But if you just look at it, it just looks like nice little undulations on the road. But the wrong angle, it can be dangerous. So we're involved in mapping those. We're exploring different ways to see the waves. Now, the waves are a clear air phenomenon, but we use computer projections, and the pilots can see the waves in the cockpit, and they can say, okay, right here, the air is going down. I need to move over here where it's going up. Now, we use it to ride the waves, but the same computer generated images can be used by airline pilots and military pilots to avoid the waves if they have to, or maybe they could use them too. If you're climbing out of Denver and it turns out if you could move over half a mile and get in rising air, it's free energy.
Sure. Very good. That's fascinating. A lot of applications, and I wasn't as familiar as much with some of the flight safety applications. That's really interesting to learn about. Can you tell me, as you've shared with me within meeting, that really the project and the success that you've achieved to date is really a reflection of the contributions of so many individuals and organizations that are all a part of this project, and the project really depends upon that level of support. And so I know, for example, that you've got some incredible partners within the project, organizations like Airbus, of course, United Technologies, BRS, Aerospace, Weather Extreme, Garmin, a few that I'm familiar with. Would you tell us a little bit more about the importance of partnerships within the project? And if you don't mind, maybe a couple of examples of some of the partners that you collaborate with.
Okay. When Steve and Einar decided to build a pressurized glider, originally it was going to be Steve's project and Steve was going to fund it. But Steve, unfortunately, passed away. He had an untimely death, and Einar was left without a major sponsor. And so it was determined that the best path forward might be to create a not-for-profit. when you answer the question, well, why would anybody want to help build a glider that is going to go to the edge of space? The commercializations of the things that we are discovering are a step or two away. So it wasn't something we could sell saying invest in this, uh, uh, and it will turn it into a profit-making venture. So we framed it as this is a scientific research and educational and innovation incubator. And so we incorporated as a not-for-profit, a 501c3. Everything that we discover, we put into the public domain uh, and share it with scientists and companies around the world. So with that, it started off that the donors mostly came from the glider community. So it was a case of glider pilots thought you're going to fly a glider higher than the U-2, you're going to fly a glider higher than the SR-71, and in started coming donations of $25, $50. Morgan Sandercock, a glider pilot out of Australia, put in hundreds of thousands of dollars, and we were off and running then. We were able to hire a designer, and then Dennis Tito. He was the first person to pay his way to the space station. He did orbital mechanics on Venus before he got into space flight and in investment. Well, Dennis was a glider pilot, and he said, "I want to go back to near the edge of space. I'm wanting to fund you." And then corporations came, and some corporations donate equipment. Instead of us having to purchase it, they'll give us the equipment and put their logo on the airplane, or we put their logo on the trailer. And then Airbus was kind enough to adopt us, and they became our named sponsor. So the airplane now says Airbus on the nose because Airbus has provided the bulk of the funding. But we still are reliant on those $25 donations, those corporate donations. It to misquote, it takes a village. It takes the whole aviation community to fund a project like ours. You mentioned something that I could mention: the Thales company, which builds satellite communications for ships and airplanes. Uh, they have donated a satellite communication system that we've put on our egret tow plane, and we're going to put it on the Perlan glider, and that'll be used for real-time communication. And one of the primary things is we'll be able to share scientific data real-time with the researchers around the world, and the meteorologists can send us updates to these wave models that we use to determine where should we go to find the lift. So we'll have a much more efficient airplane. They are also working on an artificial intelligence system that will help us plot the optimal path through the waves. We're a glider, we don't have a generator, so all of our power is battery operated. Uh, we're above the space where we can breathe the outside air. We have to breathe bottled oxygen, and so our flights are limited in time. So it's always a rush against the clock to say, can we find in this wave system, can we find just the right place to get up a little bit here and then move over here and get up a little bit further? And Thales is applying artificial intelligence. Now, the spin-off of that is, what could we do if other aircraft began to say, I can see weather, not only the horizontal winds, but I can begin to see any vertical winds, and I can use them when I can, avoid them when I should. So, this is a partnership for us that we're very excited about.
Very
And
much it
Airbus
is.
continues to provide us with fabulous support at all levels. We're excited to be a small part of the Airbus family.
Yes, yes, very much so. Well, those are some incredible partners, and I think, as you said, it takes a village. I think that the entire aviation community is very much behind you. I know that that really the Perlan Project, I think one of the most exciting projects that I was fortunate enough to learn about at Oshkosh, and that very much is very much the entire aviation community, and so I know that the entire community is very much behind the project. You mentioned some of the individuals that are involved that were involved in the early stages of the project, and how some of those individuals and companies were attracted to the project. Would you mind sharing with us how you were originally attracted to the Perlan Project?
Well, I was a bush pilot in Africa for a while. I was a pilot and a mechanic. You're going to fly a plane in Africa and South Sudan. You need to be both a pilot and a mechanic. There
Sure.
was no shop available, so we did all our own work. But so I loved aviation. I'd wanted to be a pilot since I was just a small child. And when I came back from Africa, I took up soaring. I enjoyed tremendously flying airplanes in Africa. I enjoyed looking at the wildlife and exploring that wonderful continent. And for some reason, just flying an airplane from here to there uh, wasn't as exciting. And I thought, well, let's take the engine out. Maybe that'll make it a sport. That'll make it fun. So I began to be a glider pilot. And in the Glider magazine, I read about Einar's project. And at the bottom of the article, it said, if you're interested in volunteering, contact Einar. And I stumbled over myself getting to the computer to send him an email because I thought, wow, he's going to get hundreds and hundreds of glider pilots. And out of those who said they would like to volunteer, I was fortunate to find a place on the team.
Wow. Wow, that's incredible. And how long ago was that now that you became involved in the project and went from bush pilot to working with the Perlan Project?
It was the fall of 2009 was when I first met with Einar, had a cup of coffee with him at the Portland International Airport, and we talked about flying. I went with a friend of mine from the Glider Club who was a data scientist at Intel, John David Miller, and John and I met with Einar, and before the cup of coffee was drained, we were true believers. We said we've got to do this. This has got to be the most exciting idea we'd heard in a long time. Take a engineless airplane to the edge of space.
It's amazing. Today, 2022, it continues to be, I think, one of the most exciting projects, not only in aviation, but really in the world. It's incredible work that you and the team are doing. And speaking to that, the project really has taken you around the world and back. And I know that especially the last few years have been a very busy time for you and for the project. And as I understand as well, going back over the last few years, you've seen very few summers, as I understand, and you've been traveling a lot from winter to winter at the various locations through the project. Can you tell us a little bit more about the experience over the last few years and traveling the world from winter to winter? And I would even love, if you didn't mind within that, to maybe share a story of a especially exciting day working around the world within the project.
Well, the 90% of the team are from the Northern Hemisphere. And during our winter, we prepare the Perlan aircraft. We get all of our equipment together. And then we ship it down in springtime, and we follow it just about the time summer is breaking in Europe and in the United States. We get on planes and we fly to where it's winter again. We go down to South America and spend the winter exploring these fascinating waves. And just about the time springtime is coming to Argentina, the flowers are beginning to bloom. We get back on the airplane and we go to where it's fall and the leaves are falling off already and winter comes again. So for the last number of years, we've seen more winters than summers.
Wow. I can imagine that you've just had some amazing experiences. Could you maybe just tell us about a day, any day? I think any day within the Perlan Project and within your travels around the world is probably a story in and of itself. But when you look back at, some of the fun that you've had within the project over the past few years, is there maybe a day that you would mind telling us a little bit about, or what you might have been working on that day?
Sure. One that stands out in my memory is we had a period when we were in southern Argentina and there weren't going to be any waves, so we decided we would go to Torres del Paine in Chile. It's absolutely pristine, beautiful, sharp mountain peaks, rugged, and in the winter, of course, the tourists aren't there. So we've got Torre del Paine just to ourselves, and we went down there as a team and had one of the most wonderful days looking at incredible vistas and enjoying the mountains of Argentina and Chile. So the privileges of doing something like that is the pay that we get for volunteering. The other pay that we get is being able to hang out with some of the most interesting people in aviation. The pilots and engineers and volunteers that we have are world class, and they're people that many of us would not have gotten together in one group. And to be able to meet with people like Jim Payne, our chief pilot, who holds a dozen or more world records in aviation. Uh, that's incredible. Miguel Intermendi, he's a Spaniard living in Florida now, but he was initiated into living legends of aviation in Europe. And Miguel is just an incredible person. Tim Gardner, I mentioned Morgan Sandercock, his wife Sandra, who is Argentine. These are people that are lifelong friends that we would have never met. So that's the pay. Not only having an adventure, but having it with fabulously interesting people.
Absolutely. I think that's the best pay, the best form of payment. That's really incredible to hear about, and what a day it sounds like it was within the project. I know that something else that's really important to the entire project, and I would imagine to you especially, is education. And I know that that's a very important initiative within the overall project. I know that you have a few organizations that you partner within some of these initiatives, organizations like Teachers in Space, for example, the Desert Research Institute, the Museum of Flight, that I'm very much familiar with. And I can imagine that as an educator yourself, these initiatives are extremely important. Would you mind telling us a little bit more about why education is such an important part of the Perlan Project and important to you as well?
Education is a chance to pass on to the next generation. And Perlan has taken that on as one of our major missions. Is we don't want to just set aviation records and hang a picture on the wall, shaking hands with somebody important and saying, look what I did. What we want to do is we want to inspire young people to look for careers in aviation, look for careers in aerospace, look for careers in science, look for careers in meteorology. We also want to inspire people that you don't have to have $1 billion budget. You don't have to be NASA. That if you didn't get selected as an astronaut, your days of adventure are now not over forever. That we want to be an example of what people who have a dream and are dedicated can accomplish without a huge amount of money. The amount of money that we have spent on this project is a rounding error on most aerospace projects. Now, partially because of our generous donors who give us the equipment, et cetera, et cetera. But that's part of the educational inspiration, is to let kids get inspired. We let them build things like CubeSats, and we carry them in the glider. So teachers in space train the classrooms, the students build the CubeSats, we carry them, and the students can then follow us on our virtual cockpit, which tracks the flight on a moving map and shows our altitudes and shows the temperatures and shows how much oxygen is left, and the students can say, this is a historic flight, and my experiment is flying with the airplane. And we think that that'll just nudge some students into, well, the way I say it to myself is we were inspired by Einar Enevoldsen. The next Einar Enevoldsen is 12 years old someplace and needs just a nudge so that they think bigger, they are more adventuresome, they want to explore.
Yeah, that's incredible. I know that you really are nudging many students throughout the world in the right direction, and it's very inspiring to me. And I know all of the children and individuals, and really I think anyone that hears about the project. It's such an incredible project and such a source of inspiration. So we all appreciate what you're doing and the education initiative, and most importantly, what you're doing to motivate the future of the world, which is the children today. So we certainly thank you for those initiatives and for how important that is within the project. And I know, speaking to that, that there will be a lot of viewers out there of today's podcast interview, individuals, organizations that are learning about the project for the first time today. And we'll be excited to learn more about how to support your project and how to become a part of the incredible team and individuals and organizations that you have already. So if you would you mind sharing with viewers out there how they can learn more about the project and getting involved?
The easiest way is go to perlanproject.org, and you can see pictures, you can meet the team, you can see what we're doing. And on almost every page, there's a way to connect. We say, click here if you'd like to become involved. Click here if you'd like to donate equipment and make this possible. Click here if you'd like to become a sponsor or a donor. So perlanproject.org is the shortest path between most people and the Perlan Project.
Very good. Very good. Well, audience members, you heard that. Please do visit the website. Please do click the link, send an email. Ed did it 12, 13 years ago, read an article, clicked the button, sent an email, and you've heard of the incredible journey that he's had already within his involvement in the project. So very much encourage you to do the same. And Ed, it's really been a pleasure. It's been an honor to have the opportunity to speak with you today. I really appreciate sincerely you taking the time to talk and to share some of your insights and this incredible story with the world. So thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate it.
Grant, it's always a pleasure to talk with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Ed. Well, best of luck to you and the Perlan Project. And that concludes today's episode. And please do visit the website and learn more about how you can become a part of this incredible project. Thank you.